Radio. Hosted by forensic psychologist Sarah Soderlin and paranormal investigator David Erickson. State of Mind is a show that features mentalism, mystery, and modern psychology with twists of cognitive process and challenges of the mind. News, discoveries, banter, and guests that talk all things fascinating. Join them every Tuesday at 9 p.m. Central, 10 p.m. Eastern, only on ParamaniaRadio.com.
Tune in to the Chris and Wayne Show every Thursday night at 8 o'clock on ParamaniaRadio.com. Up aboard the Haunted Ship of Doom and join Captain Chris.
It was the government secretly outside of the studio.
Skipper Wayne.
I think it's time you get the Kraken out of your butt.
Deck Wench Joe.
Yeah, I got stuck on the corner.
And of course, Cabin Boy Todd. Oh, look where I'm sitting. And always remember our motto. Don't just listen to the mayhem, be a part of it.
The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual hosts and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of Paramania, its affiliates, or its sponsors.
You are listening to Paramania Radio.
You're listening to the Parasearch UK radio show with your hosts Kerry Greenaway and Jay Lynch, right here on Paramania Radio.
Hey, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Parasearch UK radio show. I'm half of the show, or at least a quarter of the show tonight. My name is Jay, and of course, we got my lovely, lovely, lovely hostess on the other side of the pond, Miss Kerry Greenaway. How are you tonight?
I'm very well, thank you. And how are you?
Listening to you get in trouble already.
I know, I'm in trouble already. It's been like 3 minutes.
If they could do the pre-show before it comes on sometimes, it would be absolutely, I don't know, we'd probably be banned.
We probably would, to be fair.
But to be honest, we're being joined again from the other side of the pond by our wonderful good friend, Andy Mercer. And Teresa's actually joining us again tonight. So it's going to be a four-way conversation here. And we're going to talk about a topic that Kerry didn't want to talk about.
This is true. This is very, very true. But we're going to do it.
Let me just say hello first. Let me say hello to everybody first of all. Hello, guys. How are we all doing?
Absolutely. Hi, Andy.
Hello.
Yeah, we definitely want to say hello to everybody first here and kind of get the ball going. I just wanted to make sure I made Kerry understand that telling me not to do something is the very first way to usually get me to do it, even if it's wrong.
I'm kind of getting that vibe. I should know better by now. I should know better by now. But I know, I try to control things, as you know, and it never, ever works. So I don't take any responsibility for tonight's show. Just putting that out there.
That's your second mistake is trying to control me. Don't do it. Just let it go.
How do you think I've let it roll? 29 years with him.
Well, not to this Sunday. And I do want to throw that out there. Teresa and I will be celebrating our 29th anniversary this Sunday, and we will be at Ashmore Estates for a investigation and presentation that we're doing with the Lake Erie Paranormal and leading an investigation that all the proceeds of the investigation are going to the Lost Limbs Foundation. So that's how we're going to spend our anniversary, investigating an old poorhouse asylum for a charitable cause.
Oh, that's good.
Lovely.
Yes.
I'm excited about it. Yeah, that's fantastic.
No flowers and restaurants, a nice meal, no ghosts for our anniversary. That sounds good to me.
Sounds good to me too. What are we going to do for our anniversary, Andy?
Probably kill you. Well. Sacrifice to the non-existent demon Zozo or something like that. I'm quite sure.
Feisty evening then. Oh.
Beats in the depths.
Discussion. Sacrificer to Zozo. That's funny. If only that we all in this room believed in demons. Jay just kicked the hornet's nest. Well, I can't help it.
I poke the beast.
Word again.
Not to. You did that one all on your own. Oh my goodness. Right. Anyway, Jay, before we get on to that subject,
Yes, dear.
let's introduce what we're talking about tonight, all of us. Jay, over to you, my darling.
Oh, I made a post earlier this week, and it was actually I shared a screenshot of a post that somebody here in the United States had made saying awareness campaign to kids. We are going to talk about the STDs. And basically what they were talking about is they go into a whole big thing about the Ouija board, whichever way you want to pronounce it. And that's something I'll talk about in a minute. I won't get sidetracked here. But they go on about how it is a portal to hell. And if you play with it, it's not a toy. And if you play with it, you're going to invite demons through. And what did the STD stand for? I forgot now.
I know the D was demon.
Yeah. See, Ouija
well,
board...
STD tends to stand for something else over here.
Oh, yeah, it does stand for
Yeah, it does.
Stop transmitting demons. That was the motto. STD stood for Stop Transmitting Demons. Every time you mess with a Ouija board, which apparently, like I said, we'll get into this a little bit more, if you use the other 4 or 5 talking boards that are out there in the world, it's okay. Only the Ouija is demonic. So the other 4 are cool. Because they never bring up them.
No, of course not.
So
they didn't feature the film.
Yeah, and I posted this post, and it went in, and I just asked people's opinions, okay? Why is everyone so against the Ouija board? And it got some good answers, and it got some answers that were more superstitions and fear-based or religious-based. And then a whole debate got going on, and I eventually deleted it at a request from a very wonderful friend, and because it was getting out of hand, and it was getting to become personal attacks.
It was.
So with that in mind, I don't have a problem with Ouija boards. And does anyone in this current conversation have a fear or a terror or a superstition, whatever you want to call it, of a talking board? I'm just going to say talking boards because I want to bring up all of them. I'm not just going to say one over the other. They're all the same damn thing. Talking board, spirit board, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
Or am I wrong?
Absolutely. No, there's no real difference other than the placing of the characters upon a board. People use, obviously, physical boards that are actually pre-mapped out, but other people just use pieces of paper with letters written on them and stick them onto an ordinary table. It's the same thing, but that's seen as less dangerous than a physical board you bring pre-made, which is one of the daftest things at all about it. But I don't think you so much as raised a question, Jay, in the Facebook page as put a large piece of dynamite down, lit the fuse, and ran away.
He does that well.
Yes, I do. But I don't do it as a point to get people debating or arguing. I really don't. I just want people to have an open-minded discussion, and it's hard to do nowadays because so many people put their emotions into it. It's no longer a discussion; it's now a debate, and debates suck.
Well, unfortunately, because of the close association now to demons, of course, you then open up the door of religion. And when you have, so we say, religious fundamentalists, religious bigots come into a conversation that they're determined already that they know all the answers, and no matter what you say, it's obviously wrong because they know more than you do, because they've seen these things for themselves, then you think, well, that's a conversation just killed. Because they're not going to discuss or debate. They can simply lecture at you about their views and opinions, which is what, unfortunately, it's not the first time I've seen that kind of debate good discussion turn into that kind of war, because they're putting across a point that is not willing to be discussed. It's simply stated, I know more than you do because I've done X, Y, Z. You haven't. You don't know what you're talking about. You know, that's one of the things I find that's most frustrating. People have different experiences, different understandings of their experiences. But to automatically dismiss everybody else's experience as being nonsensical rubbish because yours is the right experience because it fits your religious belief system, then that doesn't really give us any kind of conversation or debate. It just becomes a statement someone's making, which is what, unfortunately, that discussion really turned into, that there was no movement, no possible way of debating. And the simple fact, without going into details now, because I think you might get onto it, that you state position A, it leads inevitably to position B. And if you cannot see how one leads to the other, then you're either being, one, fundamentally, monumentally stupid, or you're being incredibly blind and naive. And that was where the thing began to get a little bit unpleasant.
Oh, absolutely. And I noticed, like you said, it's mainly with people who have a Christian belief or Christian-based religion that have more of an adverse effect and fear of the Ouija board than what some of the others do.
Mm-hmm,
or at least it seems that to me.
I think because it plays into the belief system. It is, unfortunately, if you really look at it properly with Christianity across the board, it doesn't, not across the board, not the Ouija board, just across the board generally. There are some, that was a very much an unintended pun there, but not all groupings of Christianity have such a clear-cut defined belief system, either A, demons, or B, things like the Ouija board. It tends to be more of the kind of fundamentalist, if you like, or the other side, which you often see in the films, is the Catholic side. Most of the films that we've seen that have involved supernatural and things like Ouija boards, etc., a lot of hauntings tend to be Catholics. You go, the Catholic priest comes along. There's usually a crucifix with Christ on, which is a sign of Catholicism, as opposed to other forms of Christianity. So, it tends not just to be Christianity wholesale. It tends to be a particular area of Christianity, whether it is a very much a kind of almost fundamentalist version, like kind of almost Bible Belt kind of area, or the kind of old school real Catholics type belief system. Those are the two parts of Christianity that are very focused on the notion of demons, and by definition, of course, on the idea of the Ouija board having that kind of power. But as we start off in the conversation, actually on the Facebook page, and I absolutely say you do the research yourself. You'll see before The Exorcist, Ouija boards were not seen as being this powerful demonic portal gateway. It wasn't until Captain Howley started to appear on the Ouija board in the film, The Exorcist, that it then took on the image it has today. It very much began purely with that film. Prior to that, it tended to be seen as another form of communication, like crystal balls, mediums, trance mediumship, all that kind of thing was just a way of communicating with the other side, the ghosts, whatever you want to call them. It was only because of that film that the notion that the Ouija board was somehow a gateway or portal to hell, that's when it really began.
There for a while, wasn't a Ouija board also a common parlor game that they used to use?
Absolutely, but it kind of began with the rise of spiritual movement of both, of course, in America, the Fox sisters, where it all really began in the first place, but then it spread across to Europe as well, and the UK. And, the idea of the kind of evening parlour game of trying to communicate with the spirits became all part and parcel. It was a bit of fun, really. It was never seen as being anything particularly scary or dark. It was never really thought that these communications were with anything other than dead relatives. The idea of it being a demonic force coming through, as I say, it's a relatively new idea, but yeah, it was never seen as particularly serious. It's almost impossible to imagine it now, just how kind of normal it was to have an evening seance, have a parlour evening with crystal balls and lights dimmed and mediums come around for the evening. It was like, almost a children's entertainer, the clown that comes around for the kids at their birthday parties. It was seen as the evening entertainment before we had things like TV, of course, and films. That was the way you would sort of pass a dinner party in the evening, have a bit of fun with like a Ouija board or a medium come for the evening, or carry on seances or tarot card readings. It was all seen as very normal, part of fun.
It's amazing how we've absolutely twisted around the last 30, actually about 40 some years, and made it so different. And like I said, it's also based more on people's religious perspective than anything else. And I just don't get how just that flip of that switch can be so easy, and how they can throw it. I mean,
I think that says something as how naive and impressionable people really are as a general whole.
But Andy can vouch for this one. I mean, as a society, we've supposedly gotten more intelligent. We're supposed to have grown as human beings, but in a lot of ways, in my opinion, we've become more superstitious, more backwards, and more perpetuating back towards more archaic ways than what we are sophisticated ways that we're supposedly claiming to be.
I think that's part of the problem is that we're kind of almost bombarded with so many different ideas and different belief systems that you get lost and confused by them sometimes. But people do tend to come into the paranormal world more generally as well with a whole host of preconceived notions that do very much date back to the Victorian age here, or the sort of the late 1800s, if you like, early 1900s, of this is how it's supposed to be. You're supposed to believe X, Y, Z, and that is, that's standard belief system that exists about what ghosts are, what the supernatural is, how you communicate how it all works. These ideas have hardly really changed since the birth of spiritualism in the 1880s and 1890s. It hasn't moved on, and people do tend to wholesale take on board what other people are telling them without really thinking and questioning those ideas. So we tend to keep perpetuating. And when ideas come along that fit the new kind of thinking, it often get discarded, like the idea there's alternative explanations for what might happen with a Ouija board, get pushed to one side. I mean, going back to what was said about when they first became seen as somehow dark and sinister, it's easier for us to forget the enormous impact that the Exorcist film had. It really is easy to forget. When we're so used to so many different horror films around now, I mean, they're to a penny and they're easy to make with lots of often quite dodgy CGI special effects, but they're easy and cheap to make. But that was a total mind blower, that film, when it first came out. It was hugely successful until it scared the bejesus out of people. It really did. It was the first time a real big scale film showed anything like that. I mean, there had been films before, obviously, but that was the first time you had that kind of really whoa in your face kind of exposure to this idea of demons and demonic possession. So it's easy to forget just how powerful an influence that film was on people's thinking. And it has been perpetuated. Things like our, I say American friends, you are American friends, but American TV particularly, its approach to the supernatural. It's no longer enough to simply be investigating ghosts. You've got to bring in the demons. You've got to bring in the dark forces. That's because people want to see that, and they expect something a bit more dramatic than simply seeing the ghost investigations of the older TV. It was a long time ago, but the early 2000s when this kind of stuff really exploded on the screen. Now it tends to be more to do with demons and dark forces, and that of course perpetuates the same ideas because they're not developing ideas, they're just coming out of the same old story.
Okay, at this point, I just want to talk about some of the hashtags. Some of the hashtags that this article had. One was ringing hell's doorbell. Ouija is not a game. Hashtag STD. STD awareness. A demonic realm. Demons. Possessed tour. The possessed tour. Demons are real. Ban the board. Not child's play. Don't play unprotected STDs. STDs clinic. STDs clinic. I mean, seriously, guys. I mean, paranormal investigator, Paradigm, and professionals only. Professionals only.
Professional what?
Exactly.
Professional what? Exactly. I mean, Jay's a professional asshole. Does that mean you can do it?
Did you hear that? Teresa actually dropped a bad word on the air.
I'm sorry, Dave.
Ding, ding.
So naughty. Oh, sorry. And I've also forgotten. Dr. Dave says, Grandma ain't that nice.
I like demons are people too.
I don't think Dr. Dave's got that accent though, Kerry. That's in a rather West Country there.
Oh, I know. I have to keep rocking out my West Country accent. No, it's a really bad West Country accent. I'd just like to point that out. Nobody talks like that in the UK, apart from me, occasionally. Anyway.
That's a Cornwall occasionally, you'll find it. Or
It's just every time I talk to her, so I don't know what the occasion is.
What worries me about that article and all the hashtags? I mean, we talk about differences between speech in the UK and America. STD means something completely different in my world to what this guy's talking about.
It means the same.
It means the same thing here. When most people hear STD, they don't think of stop transmitting demons.
No, you think of something completely different.
Something completely
different. In America as well, that phrase. Yeah.
Right.
If you think one or two of those things, I think they were rather taking the mickey with those hashtags.
I think they must have been, because that was absolutely laughable.
Hashtags, and you see on that second line, if you guys can see the article, if you saw it on my page before I deleted it, hashtag possessed tour. Now, there was another guy 4 or 5 years ago was doing a paranormal tour called the Possessed Tour. Apparently, people think this is original. They're going to do their own. So these people are doing, this gentleman and whoever else he's working with are doing a tour. And now they're transmitting this belief system that they have, their opinion, which is all this is their opinion about the Ouija board. They cannot prove any of this. they're now going around passing this off as credible information and knowledge because they're hashtag professionals only.
But now I wonder if those same people that are doing that are complaining about the use of pendulums or the use of K2
Oh, no, they use
or a REM pod, because it's all the same thing. Particularly a pendulum and a pendulum board or a pendulum and a pendulum map.
Yeah.
Because you're still using...
10 times fast.
Yeah, right? You're still using your physical body. A REM pod you can set to the side and let it do its thing. But with a pendulum, and I use pendulums all the time, I collect them.
Yeah.
You're still using your body as a conduit. And that is the same thing as doing a Ouija board.
A planchette. Now,
yeah.
With that in mind, I want to ask Kerry, and would that also include anything like that? And if you're making physical contact with a planchette, that's why they're using your energy. Like Patrice says, that's pendulums, dowsing rods. All those things like that would then be the same conduit, wouldn't they? You're making physical contact with it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You are. But, there is two. Are you transmitting your impressions through almost like a tiny form of telekinesis onto the board? Or is your subconscious picking up on the energy around and then transmitting that through? I mean, there are different trains of thought on this. Now, I work, as you know, with crystals and minerals, and I have never opened up a portal to hell. Have you, Andy?
Not that I'm aware of. Not if I intended to, put it that way.
No, I mean, and I've never, ever, in my whole time of working, investigating energy fields with people, opened up a portal to hell. I mean, I hate that term, portal.
But it seems like it's more of a thing that happens on this side of the pond than what you guys experience.
Yeah. No, I don't think so. I think there are. I suppose we talk about it in terms of energy hotspots.
Okay.
Yeah, but
I wouldn't say it was. I
think I kind of like your wording of it better.
Because when you walk around the building, or when you're working energy or whatever, you do feel that. You do feel more of a buzz or a hit in certain specific areas.
Is that where the hell's at?
But I would never have called it a portal to hell. I mean, Andy, what's your take on this?
Well, we can talk about areas and places in the world that have more prone to strange activity than others, but I don't think you necessarily create those yourself. There are, may have other interests. There are certain things you can do with the use of magic. I don't mean sort of country trip magic. I mean the other kind of magic that can create temporary effects. Certainly, that can affect possibly the mind or the immediate environment around you, but they're only ever temporary. They're never permanent. And I would struggle to find even talk about serious occultists who've been working on stuff for decades. You won't find many who will tell you that you're actually dealing with completely separate entities that exist in other realms. You're dealing with stuff in the collective unconscious. You're dealing with stuff from our consciousness. There's connectivity of consciousness, if you like, what they call transpersonal consciousness, which is the idea of a collective consciousness. It's a different idea, but the idea of the mind-to-mind communication, that you're working at that kind of level, that you're creating thought forms of your own that you're working with, that you can interact with other thought forms. It was hard to say that without getting the THs and the S in the wrong place. But none of those are to do with things that are purely from some kind of dark satanic realm. That's the thing. You've got to bear in mind the originator of the whole notion of demons all comes back to mental illness, which is the point I was trying to make yesterday. That person was determined to not accept that it was. If you look at things like the Bible and other texts from those time frames, they talk about people who are acting and doing strange things because we had no conception whatsoever of the notion of mental illness. And people would lead to the idea of what was being told by the religious people. Oh, these are dark forces of demons from hell. But when you look, of course, most of those so-called demons of hell are actually gods of other faiths that have been literally demonized, is where the term comes from. So why is it for one group of people these are good, positive energies that are helpful to those crowds and people, etc., but to other faiths and religions these are evil monsters because they're not the same god? So it's a combination of demonifying pre-existing spirits, if you like, entities, energies, whatever, but turn them into a specific thing as being a demon from hell, and the explanation for mental illness, physical disability, people's general bad luck of experiences. There had to be a reason they could explain, particularly mental illness and physical disability, when someone's body looks physically normal, but legs don't work, arms don't work, people have epileptic fits, etc. They had to be explained in ways that fitted what was the then known ideas, and the idea of demonic forces coming in and taking over people made much more sense. But that sort of disappeared a long, long time ago, that kind of very old thinking. But unfortunately, certain individuals seem to wish to perpetuate that belief system in order to fit their own ideas, their own beliefs, their own way of working and understanding their experiences, which I find incredible.
It is incredible. I mean, if you read the article, I'll keep going back to this article because I couldn't believe it. Oh my goodness. It does read like an STD pamphlet.
Yes, it did.
If it was written by about, I don't know, 6th or 7th grader.
Well, yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's for the 6th or 7th graders to understand.
But it's absolutely.
It's not an evolved thought pattern at all.
No, and I think it's the attack on the Ouija board or the spirit board or talking boards, whatever you want to call that. That's not actually what's bothering me more than anything about this. What's bothering me more about it than anything is that we are trying our best. A lot of people are trying their best to get some form of unity and some form of intellectual respect for this field. And then you have someone put this out there making claims of hashtag professionals only, making those kind of accusations and statements to put something out there that is purely based upon their own interpretation, their own limited knowledge and understanding of what really is going on, and their absolute religious beliefs. So how can you get a scientific overview and respect for this field when people are putting such prejudiced, self-centered, egotistical,
uneducated
garbage? Just garbage. I mean, all those big words, I finished it off with garbage.
I know, and I just ran out of uneducated in there.
It's best though. It's a good word, that one.
His smart got out again.
But it's just I think that bothers me more than anything. And then when Mr. Mercer, Andy here, had a nice conversation, was trying to have a nice conversation about it, the gentleman went from a religious standpoint and his religious beliefs and his interpretation of the evidence and the experience that he had. That's all it is. And you can have. It's no different to me than a car wreck or something. If they have 10 witnesses, they pull all 10 witnesses aside and, hey, I talk to them individually because they get 10 different stories because they got from 10 different perspectives and 10 different understandings. And somewhere in all those 10 is the truth. The problem with it is none of us are working together to find out what that middle ground is, what that truth is. We keep putting things like this up, and it's just irritating the shit out of me.
I think you've got two schools of
problem
thought,
also.
though. Sorry, Andy, carry on.
I was going to say, I think just following on from what Jay was saying there, the problem also wasn't simply the fact that he then positioned himself with a particular viewpoint, which he's entitled to do so. It was that he instantly rubbished everybody else's. He instantly went on to the attack of, how dare you question their existence? I know they exist. I've seen them for myself. They are real. And I said, well, I've done this for 30-odd years, been a therapist for 15 years, and I'm pretty much convinced that what I've seen, I've never seen a demon that convinces me that they exist. Effectively what I said, well, you're wrong. How do you know? You know nothing. I thought, right, here we go.
Exactly.
Exactly what he said, and it just turned off. I'm not having this.
It was absolutely, to me, it is more detrimental to our field than what we're trying to accomplish in this field. To have people react that way than to stay with what you were originally trying to do is to get an understanding. You weren't denying him his interpretation. You were not denying him his belief whatsoever. But he immediately got defensive that you were challenging him. And as long as we continue to have that, that's no different than a third grade schoolyard bully. I love using this analogy. here I am saying these things and things, but yet when I go to these events and things, I wear my dungarees and braces or bibbed overalls, whatever you want to call them, and people look at, oh, it's just another big dumb redneck, and then I come out with these things I'm like, now who's the big dumb redneck now? You guys will automatically want to judge me the same way you're judging your evidence. You're taking all credibility away from it by your preconceived ideas of what you think it is instead of actually looking into what it might be.
Absolutely. I mean, I think he really kind of went wobbly when I pointed out the simple fact that, unfortunately, those who tend to perpetuate the notion of existence of demons and possession are doing a disservice to people suffering from mental illness, because often they are still being regarded as being possessed with demons. In actual fact, psychological help is what is required. And he came up with this tirade and said, this has nothing to do with it. And I thought, are you serious? That's the biggest problem we have with the idea of demonic possession still being a reality. Because you see it in South America, people that get treated, and it's clearly mentally ill, but they're being treated as if they've been possessed by demons and going for all sorts of barbaric so-called exorcisms. And he couldn't see the link. He himself says he lectures and talks about a particular mental illness, that the mental difficulty he has himself. And I thought, you of all people must see the dangerous link that inevitably forms between the two about misdiagnosing very real illness, as I was saying before, and using this medievalism, as it's been called, not just by me but by others, this approach to the demonic possession notion that then completely ignores the reality of what people are actually experiencing, and then they're just left as if they've been, they're pariahs now because they're possessed by demons. It's the very thing that mental illness has been trying to fight, even today, being labelled and treated as such, and he's perpetuating that, and he couldn't see the link, and I found that out. I was just flabbergasted by that point, I have to say. But then, I'm making that general point. That's the problem when you continue to persist on the notion of demonic possession, and that things like the Ouija board being a doorway to that said possession, then you are treating mental illness as if it is some kind of medieval danger of being demonically possessed. And that was really the central point I was trying to make. But by that point, he just wasn't listening. It was quite clear he got his soapbox. He didn't want to listen at all.
No,
yeah, he was done. Well, and it's like, oh, go ahead, Kerry.
Sorry. Andy,
no, please.
From the perspective from a psychological perspective, can you manifest something like a demon? I will use the D word. Can you actually manifest that yourself when you're working with a tool or in the investigation field? Can you actually do that because of your belief system?
Oh, absolutely. No doubt about it. If you want to believe you've become possessed by a demon, and you will believe you have, then you will act accordingly. The power of our minds over us, what we can do with our own belief systems. If you want to believe we've become demonically possessed, and I'm not talking about people pretending and acting as if they are, but genuinely believe they actually are and act accordingly. Absolutely. It certainly does happen. Also, I would say that exorcism for people like that will work, because they will believe it's going to work. It's going to free them of this supposed demon that they believe has taken them over. Yeah, there's no doubt about them at all. I said that in the article, in the discussion. If you're a believer of that, then yeah, exorcism will work, and psychologists will use it if they think you genuinely believe it's going to cure you. It's called the placebo effect, and it's incredibly powerful. We often make it out placebo as if it's some kind of non-help. It's kind of just a fakery, but placebo effect is incredibly powerful, and it can cure all sorts of purely psychological maladies. Of course, you can't deal with physical injury, but if it's a purely psychological state, you believe you're X, Y, Z, and you're given something or taken through a process that you wholeheartedly believe is going to free you of that, there's a fairly good chance it's going to work because of your belief system, and that's the key. It's the belief system that matters. And certainly if you believe you're possessed and you believe exorcism will cure you, there's a fairly good chance it's going to, but it doesn't mean the demons exist. It doesn't have to be around. They don't have to be real or at all. It's simply because of a belief system.
So going on with belief systems, I'm trying to form a thought, so bear with me on this. We have talked before about being able to build a character and place it onto a location, and then psychics and mediums then are able to seem to pick up on that and have it come through on things like the Ouija or pendulums or even just a medium working in a mediumistic way.
Yeah.
That's possible to do.
Yeah. Oh, yes. But it doesn't require anything supernatural. It doesn't require anything beyond the human realm. It's just a recognition of how powerful the human mind actually is. I think we talked on this, I touched on it before. It's a very good phrase by a long-term occultist writer called Lon-Milo Duquette, who said quite simply, it's all in your head, but you have no idea how big your head actually is, as in your brain capacity. And the connectivity of minds, we're not talking about some great grand sort of collective consciousness, because it's the unconscious that's collective, but the transpersonal notion of connected communication, that seems to be more and more evidence to suggest there is a definite reality to that. But again, it doesn't require anything from hell or heaven, even angels or demons. It might have been the way those experiences may have been explained in the past, but you don't need them to explain these kind of phenomena anymore. It can certainly happen in a localized environment. It is effective. I think we've talked before about an occasion where I was on an investigation where something very odd had happened in one of the rooms at the location that was very evident, that you could felt different to any other time we'd been there, either before or after. And it was clear something had gone on there. There's no doubt about it, and it left an impression. But it fades in time. Most of these places, those kind of effects that we manifest ourselves, unless they're perpetuated by people believing the same thing, then you find it doesn't last. It tends to fade unless it's continually perpetuated. Now, as you know, I'm never going to name the location, but I carried out just such an experiment to create the thought idea of a particular ghostly entity at a location. And I know that it's been reported by dozens of other people who I've never met before. Now, you could argue that it left a powerful impression there, and that people pick it up independently. But you could also argue, at the end of the day, this is a fairly small community, and people talk to each other. People go to different people's investigations, people with different groups, and it's possible that one spoke to another, one spoke to somebody else. They said, person one says, hey, we got XYZ ghost this location. You'll go the next month, see if you can pick it up. And behold, oh, yes, they pick it up. They tell somebody else. So it's like Chinese whispers almost. It goes on and on and on. So you can argue it from that way as well. But I'd certainly localized effect for a short period of time, I've certainly experienced it, but it doesn't require anything other realm-wise, shall we say. It just requires a lot of mental focus and intent to create something. But again, it never lasts very long.
So the more people that visit said location that you created, does that perpetuate it? Does that continue that energy that you put out there initially? Or does it generally fade as time goes on?
That's a difficult one to answer, because you could certainly argue that those who go to an investigation, again, I've seen this happen where you're at an investigation. If the people at the investigation are kind of, whatever, we'll go along, we'll do this, we'll do that, very little ever happens. But if they're more enthused and actively involved, then a lot more tends to happen. So there is definitely the human mind element playing its part in terms of charging up the environment. And these are the same with these kind of experiences, kind of energies, if you like, entities, whatever you want to call them, you might deliberately create at a location. If you keep going back, you could argue, A, it gets charged up by your mental energy, your presence, or B, it's because there's already the rumour that this thing exists, because the location has been regularly visited, and the place I chose is very regularly visited, that the story has been perpetuated simply because of the idea, again, of suggestion, that you're saying this ghost, Fred Bloggs, who walks around with his head under his arm, is definitely there, because I saw him, see if you see him. You'll have a cognitive bias towards then experiencing that same figure because your mates told you they've seen it. So you'll go there and think, I'll keep an eye out for that one. So you're actually thinking about that particular one. There's different ways you can argue it. One is more paranormal than the other, but they both have the human element within them. They don't, again, I keep saying this, I know, but they don't require sort of anything from minions of hell or heaven or any of that kind of stuff for that kind of thing to happen. And there's that silence again.
No,
I'm taking it.
Yeah, exactly. We're processing that thought pattern.
You're working my brain again, man. I'll use up all my big words.
Sorry, I apologize for that.
No, that's exactly what I wanted. That's what I intended with the original. Well, with my copy of the original post, was people to have this conversation to open their minds up, and it didn't go that way. I mean, not just the guy that kind of got kind of crappy with you, but we also had the one young lady that talked about how she's like, don't touch the Ouija boards. Nobody knows what they're doing with them. I'm all the time going around having to clean up these messes from all these investigations where people have used them and they've opened up these portals. And I'm like, seriously? I know you. We've met several times, and you
So
really
the
believe
question-
this.
And how could this spew from your mouth?
So the question is, if your belief system is you will open up a portal to, and I'm air quoting, hell, or a bad place, if that's your belief system, can that then manifest?
You can make yourself believe it is. You can make things appear to happen as if they are, but that doesn't mean you have. As simple as that. If you want to believe that that's happening to you, if you want that the people around want to believe that's happening, then that's what's happening because you believe it's happening. But it isn't interfering or interconnecting with anything beyond that group of people. You know, you could convince yourself of all sorts of things. I mean, remember what I do for a living. People who come in and convince themselves of X, Y, Z. There's absolutely happening in their life that they can't do this, they can't do that. The body's reacting to this. And it's all mental. It's not mental as in mad. It's mental as in it's the mind that's doing it. You know, creating a particular physical effects, you know, things like a random example. Someone worked a long while back used to have a very bad stoop, but there was nothing physically wrong with them. Their body was perfectly fine, but it was all to do with psychological pressure of their life and their experiences. And as we worked through those, they found themselves actually able to, they were literally walking taller because their body was manifesting that kind of belief system. One of the ways I work a lot with is the body location of a particular feeling of emotion. I'm focusing on that particular part in order to release the emotion from that. And it's kind of body work that's very, very effective. But the pain isn't really there in your chest. It is because it's adrenaline, but the emotion's not in your chest. It's only in your head. But if you locate it there and it feels like it's coming from there, you work with that point, then you free them at that level. And it is the release the subconscious needs to be able to let go of it. But by the same token, the reverse of it is you manifested that within yourself because of a belief system. So again, as I said, if you've got a group of people sitting around a Ouija board who believe that this is a gateway to hell, that if they get the wrong spirit come through, it will possess one of them, and then the board moves around and then Fred starts acting all weird and his eyes are rolling around and he starts talking gibberish, then they believe he's possessed by a demon because that's their belief system. He's acting accordingly because he believes he's possessed by a demon. But there ain't no demon there. It don't need to be, because it's just the way the mind complies with what it's the expectation of the experience. And if you're in that environment, you already have a certain degree of belief that it's going to work because you're already doing it. It's part of what you're doing. You don't go as a total skeptic and say, oh no, I don't believe this works at all, but I'm going to give it a go. There's going to be a question of doubt in your mind. If you didn't believe it at all, you wouldn't bother. But there's always going to be that, well, you know, I call myself a skeptic. I don't really believe, but I'll give it a try. Why are you giving it a try if you don't believe at all? Because there's an element of belief still in there. You know what I mean? It doesn't require anything beyond us for things like that to begin to happen and to manifest, because it's our belief that they're going to work. And 9 times out of 10, hey presto, they do.
Okay, Jay, Teresa, anything?
No, I agree 100% because I think that a lot of people in the field, I agree with what Andy's saying, that they want these things to happen. That's why I question a couple of my first experiences. I think that I wanted them to happen. I wanted to experience something. I didn't put it out there exactly what I wanted to experience, but I knew of all these different people that have made these claims at that location. So one of the things that happened to me is I saw a black mass. Now, did I really see a black mass and see a person step around? Or was it that what my mind created because I wanted to have the experience that everybody else was having? I firmly believe in that.
I think that if you sit there and you tell people, well, at 3:15 to 3:30 in this area of the location, you're going to see X, Y, and Z. And then after 4 o'clock, everybody gathers together and you say, what'd you see? Well, you know what? Between 3:15 and 3:30, I saw X, Y, and Z. You're going to hear that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the same thing as with an EVP.
Yeah, well, if you can have 2 people who stand side by side. One's a believer, they're going to see that thing. One doesn't believe. The person who believes are going to see it. The person next to him doesn't see a thing. You think, well, how can that be? If you're both standing there and one person sees it, the other person doesn't. I mean, I've had that many times, investigations where the person's gone, oh, I saw that, absolutely, it was definitely there. And the person next to him, there was nothing there. I didn't see anything. And you think, well, either one of them's lying, which I doubt, So what they're experiencing is as much to do with what's going on in their mind as what's actually out there. Now, I'm not saying they're imagining it or making it up, but because they have to have the right mindset to experience these things, and the person who has no mindset doesn't experience it. I've seen that before. I mean, I remember an occasion a few years ago where it was. I'm suspicious of people who make tables apparently wobble when there's nothing actually going on. They can put their hands in, it starts to wobble. But I've seen it happen. And one guy who was at the table was absolutely adamant they didn't move. He said, "You never move. I don't know what you people are talking about. That table didn't move." And yet he was there with the other four who all said it did. And I know you could see he wasn't lying. He wasn't misimagining. He wasn't like daydreaming what was going on. But he said, "No, I felt nothing." And yet they're all saying, "I could feel it vibrate." Now, it was a weak vibration. You couldn't see it. But the other four people, I think it was, could feel it vibrating, and he was holding the table the same as they are, and he said, no, it isn't working. He doesn't believe in ghosts. He never believed. He came because his girlfriend wanted to go. And he was adamant, nothing's happening. I'm not making this up. That table did not move. I don't know what the hell they're talking about. It never moved. So, but the other four were convinced it was moving. They could feel the tremoring of the table. Now, were they all four lying? No. It's a belief system. It's about how your mind can manifest what you want to believe. It's happening. They felt this movement. He didn't. He didn't believe in anything supernatural. They did. That's the thing. If it was an independent force working upon that table, it wouldn't matter whether you believed or not the table was moving. You'd feel it moving, whether you believed in it or not, because it's an independent external force working upon it only. But there's something else happening here. Because all four of them, of the five, felt it, something is happening because they're feeling something. They're not imagining because they're all four feeling it. But the fifth person wasn't feeling it. So it's that kind of weird area again between not just in the mind and not just out there in the real world. It's somewhere between the two. As I often talk about that kind of almost like a third space or the blending of the two, that this sort of phenomenon is really going on. But when it comes back to our topic, began with demons through the Ouija board, you're then talking about completely external forces coming in and taking over. Now that just doesn't happen.
So, going on to that particular thought pattern, is there anything paranormal?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're missing a very important point I'm making here. I'm not saying it's A, imagination. I'm not saying B, they're making it up. I'm not saying C, it's not happening. I'm saying it's happening, but not in the way that we necessarily think these things are happening. That's my years of experience and observation of these things, that the phenomena is real, but not completely external to us. I mean, you can argue the old stories, would the ghost be seen if there was no one at the location? Who knows? Because there's no one at the location, so you can't tell. But just from years of doing investigations and public events, and the public events especially are informative of that, if the group that you're with isn't really up for it, is not really kind of bothered, a bit flat, a bit non-effective, then nothing will happen. But if the group are really into it, really want things to happen, they're not faking it, but that energy, the vibe in the group is pretty powerful, and things seem to manifest through that vibe, that energy. But it doesn't necessarily require anything in heaven or hell, if you like, for that to occur.
Teresa?
I can't agree more. No, I'm just saying it really.
She does that all the time. I couldn't agree more than bells out.
No. Shut up.
Have your own thought process. Quit being a part of the group.
Yeah, you're going to screw me up here.
She's just being part of Andy's collective consciousness now.
God. No, my consciousness is nowhere near Andy's. He's much more intelligent than
That's
I
why
am.
you're dragging on to his like I do.
I just read a hell of a lot.
See, we read here too.
We do?
Well, the pictures.
Oh, okay.
I was trying to make it sound good, Jay. Shut up.
Now, where were you going with this? Where you got sidetracked?
I have been sidetracked. Thank you so very much.
Ignore him and carry on, babe.
I have no idea where I was going.
Okay.
Thanks to him.
She just drift off to the collective consciousness again. She's
Collective unconscious.
unconscious. I'm snoring.
Yeah, my conscious is unconscious right now.
Okay, so Okay, so let's pull this back. So corpsed in the other studio.
Let me just clarify a couple of quick points there.
Okay.
Collective unconscious is a universal, deep unconscious concept. The collective unconscious, something that we all, humanity, share in. It contains the notion of what's called archetypes, which are kind of the blueprint or framework of concepts. They're not real entities within it. That's the standard Jungian concept, notion of collective unconscious. Some of us have moved a little bit further forward to the notion that it may well be the notion of consciousness within that collectivity that can manifest, i.e. intelligences within our collective awareness that can sometimes manifest information. That's a possibility. When we talk about transpersonal consciousness, i.e. actual conscious level transpersonal connection, that's localized within a smaller group, i.e. group of investigation, that they're sharing experiences, they're sharing belief systems, which then help that things to begin to manifest. But it's small, it's localized within the group that's working together, whatever that group might be. That's why 4 or 5 people can experience something. And as David was pointing out in our chat bit on the Skype, and I think he's raised an important point, there is a willingness to go along with certain things to feel you're part of the group. That you might have your doubts, but you don't express things. You don't appear to be the outsider. It takes a fairly brave person to say, actually, I didn't experience anything. I don't know what these guys are talking about. Yeah, and I do think there are people, and I've seen it on investigations with the group stuff, where you think, I don't think everyone believes what they've seen or experienced, but they don't want to say it. But then there are those that are sort of perhaps more willing to speak out and say they don't believe what they've seen or experienced. And it's relatively rare that people are willing to do that. But, I know human psychology. I know human body movements. I can read faces pretty well because I have to for my job. And I can tell when someone doesn't quite believe what they're saying. But that's the difference. The collective unconscious is a global thing all humanity shares in, whereas the idea of the transpersonal conscious experience is things that are localized to a smaller group sharing together.
Does that then get uploaded?
Well, that's a different territory entirely. I'm not sure, because, as I say, there are ways in which the ideas can continue to be disseminated purely by communication of a normal type of conversation. It's a difficult one because, again, the collective unconscious, Jungian's concept, has been stolen and abused and taken over by a lot of what you might call New Age philosophies and thinking. But it's a possibility that certain fragmentary knowledge, if you like, of experience can, I think, possibly be caught up in that. Again, that's outside of the conventional Jungian approach to what the collective unconscious is. So, I'd get colleagues to say you're talking rubbish because they don't like that notion. But it's a possibility. But again, if there's a collective awareness of a possibility of things happening at a location, then you could find that. That this continues to perpetuate because people believe there's something there, or it's collected, it's recorded, I should say, in the localized energy field, which again comes back to the modernized notion of the stone tape theory, where forget stones, it's actual EM field theory that's capturing those experiences.
Goodness me.
That's a lot to soak in.
It is an awful lot to soak in, because then it brings into question, I know there's no real proof that we exist after death anyway, but I still want to, and this is my belief system, I want to believe that we exist after death. I want to believe that we have an ulterior purpose, that we aren't just existing and then die. And I don't subscribe to any specific religion at all. But
I think it's just a terrifying
I just want to know it's more than this.
I think the problem is the terrifying prospect of, is this all there is? One of the things that religion has always done throughout the millennia is give that hope and promise of a better life, a better world, that makes this one seem a little bit more bearable. Now, for us, we live in a very bourgeois way. We like a short number of hours, maybe 5 days. Sometimes, unfortunately, we have to work 6 days a week. But our environment is relatively safe. Okay, America has its problems, but ours is relatively safe. That we have an okay life. But if you think when you go back to the Industrial Revolution, people were working 12, 14 hours a day, 6, sometimes even 7 days a week. They had nothing. That kind of cruel existence was awful. And you had to have something to grasp a hold of to believe there was some kind of future, some kind of next life that was better than this one, because this one was so bloody awful. That's why people tended to hold on to religion, why religion is so powerful, effectively because it promises this inevitable, this excellent afterlife. I mean, I hate to bring the topic up, but think about the Muslim terrorists. That's exactly what they're doing, because they believe they're going to go to heaven. They're going to believe that is what's going to happen. They're going to this better life. So we all have that problem of the fear of what happens next if there's nothing. It's like, what was the whole point?
It's a whole fascinating subject. And it all started from an itty-bitty, very belief system-driven article that our beloved Jay posted on his wall this week. But it does raise up huge concepts which are absolutely fascinating to me and show a whole different light on some of the things that happen when we're out investigating or living even on a day-to-day basis.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Jay, Teresa?
I have a question.
Okay.
Less than 4 minutes. We got to wrap up.
This may take... Well, hurry. It's kind of a stupid thought, but if you have the collective unconsciousness that's just kind of out there hanging out, can a spirit take something from that and give it to you as a thought?
Not really, no.
Okay.
I think we're going to have to do a show on this. We are going to have to do a show on it.
Oh, absolutely. We'll have to
I keep nagging him to do a show on this. I do keep nagging Andy Mercer to do a show on the collective unconsciousness and all those kind of things, because this side of this fascinates me. I don't know about you guys out there, and I don't know about Jay and Teresa, but this absolutely fascinates me because it opens up a whole new way of looking at things.
The thing is, you can't have a personal experience of it because it isn't a personal thing. It is a universally shared way in which the deep subconscious works. I'm trying to think of a good analogy, and I never can. There isn't one. There really isn't. It's just it's the way the depth of our minds are working at the lowest level. It's where we get notions that we can kind of share. Just very, very quickly, because I know we're running out of time here. One of the commonest you encounter from the negative unconscious is an archetype called the shadow. Now, this is the negative part of yourself. It's all the things about yourself you don't like. You bury in the back of your mind, you don't really want to think about. Often in therapy, the first thing you start to really encounter is that shadow, which is the whirlpool of all the negative stuff about yourself. The concept of the shadow comes from the collective unconscious. It's the archetype of the negative you don't like about yourself. So it doesn't have a real existence in itself, because none of them do, but it connects to you personally. But it's a framework, the shadow self is a framework we've all got, but everyone's own shadow is individual to that person.
Absolutely amazing. We have to go. We got less than 20 seconds, so thank you all for joining us tonight. Thank you for everything. Andy, we will get you back on here and talk again.
Thank you, Andy.
Everybody have a good night.
Thank you.
Love it.
Good night, guys.
Chris and Wayne, good night all.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to join us for more shows throughout the week. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and the World Wide Web to keep up to date with all the shows right here on Parasearch Radio.